Hey legends, and welcome back to the Sim Racing channel, where we're pushing our limits. Being a Type A introvert who started with a fascination for rally driving, one of the most compelling things about sim racing to me has always been to challenge oneself with hot lapping. In fact, the reason I know the Nordschleife implicitly is owed almost entirely to the Project Cars 2 production car leaderboards. After many weeks of slamming my head into a wall, I not only learned the world's longest racetrack through sim racing, but also got a better grip on some fundamental driving techniques, such as trail braking, which directly translated over into improving my real-life driving abilities. We've gone on at length on this channel about our love of sim racing, so I won't bore you any further singing its praises. We're all here for the same reason after all, to share a passion for the same hobby. This video represents a new series which, assuming you guys like it, I'm hoping to touch back on regularly over the weeks. We'll take a look at some of my personal hardest laps on the leaderboards, often in search of the elusive quote-unquote world record, and I'll briefly talk you guys through the circumstances, the mentality, and the process behind each one. Allow me to iterate. The point of this video series is not to showboat or talk about how much we can one-up each other. It's about the continual desire to be better than you were yesterday. It's about finding that missing element, that line you never thought about, that apex you never hit, that setup adjustment that suddenly made the car come alive. The sheer wealth of time and effort invested to shave that final second off your lap time. For those of you who are newer to sim racing, it presents a good opportunity to learn some new track and car combinations, as well as practice basic driving techniques. For those of you who are more experienced than I, it gives you a nice challenge to knock my times down and hopefully have a little fun in the process. If you find yourself enjoying this video, consider subscribing and join us for future iterations. Even a simple like and comment go a long way towards getting the channel out to more people. So without further ado, let's get into it. So, we begin with the Metal Moro AJR. This is one I'm really excited about, which is why I saved it for first place. I spent a lot of time yesterday driving the AJR, the P1 class car, for kind of the first time ever. I spent a lot of time on Alton Park trying to find the most capable variants of it, because there are, I think, 4 different versions of this car, all with different engines and different ways of making power. They all kind of have their own disadvantages and advantages depending on the tracks. I finally found a combination that worked for Alton Park, and I wanted to port it over to Brands Hatch. Brands Hatch is an interesting one for me because while being a track that I love, it's one that I only learned with the release of AMS2 around about a month ago. Don't crucify me, I know Brands is one of like the tracks for any kind of production car based racing, and turns out the prototypes are super fun on it too. As opposed to driving something like an Ultima, this car with its insane amounts of downforce makes you not as worried about spinning out the rear end, so you can really focus on your lines and getting every 10th out of the lap time. Without further ado, let's get into the actual cockpit and let's talk through the lap. Alright, here we are starting off. I can't actually remember whether the quote-unquote world record I'm attempting to beat is my own time at this point or if it's another person's. I remember spending about an hour or something on this track, and I remember knocking over the record a few times in different models of the AJR. So not the cleanest run I've ever done through T1, running out a little bit wide but still maintaining that acceleration through the compression at the bottom. T2 a lot better, as you can see the car's got a natural rotation through there. Perhaps didn't take it out as wide as I should have, but still the flow through this set of corners is good. You can see a healthy cut over the grass there. Don't ask me how the car's able to do that without braking. For some reason it is. This one was pretty much magic. The car just rotated itself all the way around. Felt absolutely amazing. Much harder to do in other cars. I actually find that harder to do in the Rocco and the Ultima as well. So, brake between the 2 boards here, 2 gears down, and it just feels amazing in this particular model of the car. Brake, 1 gear down, nice healthy cut on the curb, run out wide. Back flat we are. I love this combination of corners. Nice healthy cut on the inside, the downforce keeping us in check, and then brake early and then get over the curb if you can. Yep, use the entire track. So I was very happy with my sector 2 times on this track. Brake at the board, turn in, and then basically get on the power. You always think you're going to go wide there, but there is a compression that you catch on the outside, which basically saves your life and your lap. And across the line for a 113.461. So, it says my potential is lower than that. I could believe that with a really manic lap, maybe a 112 is possible. Maybe. I remember thinking 113 itself wasn't possible until I moved to that particular variant of the AJR. I can't exactly remember which one it was. I think it was the straight 4 turbo. I don't know if that's the Honda or something else. You guys can just check the leaderboard times and see it for yourself. You can actually copy the setup adjustments that I did too and just try it out, see if it works for you, see if it doesn't work, and I'm keen to see what you guys make of that track and car combination. Okay, so next one up is the Rocco 001 at Adelaide Historic. I got the idea to try this track and car combination as part of one of the last force feedback updates, which you guys may have seen. As invariably happens with me, I do a few laps in a track and a car and I go, wow, this is kind of fun, let's see how far we can possibly push this. So after I recorded that video and spoke about the force feedback update with you guys, I actually kind of knuckled down for about an hour or so and saw what I could get out of the track and the car combination, which I think was like a couple of seconds quicker than the best that we're able to get on the update video itself. So I think on the whole, when it comes to Adelaide Historic, it's one of the best rendered tracks in the entire game, and I love it with the open wheelers. I think they have the performance profile to really get the most out of it, and certainly with the aggressive curbing, it's just super fun to kind of nestle the car around at the apexes and kind of use the curbs on the runoffs and just kind of really kind of push the car to its limits. And the Rocco is a lot more forgiving, it has way lower performance potential, but because of the way that it drives, it's just super fun to do, and it's nice to actually drive on a flat surface. Not flat in terms of bumps, but flat in terms of like hills and, you know, larger undulations like that, because I normally drive the Rocco at Alton Park and Brands Hatch, so this was a nice change. As you can see, the car is almost constantly on the limit. It's very easy to slide, very easy to kind of pivot around with the throttle, so it's a very exuberant driving style. So let's get into the actual lap from the cockpit. Alright, coming up to the first straight, the important thing here is to line the car up as far to the right as you possibly can leading into that initial chicane. You're trying to minimize the amount of speed loss. You've got to munch that curb. You've got to really eat that first curb so you minimize the amount that you run off over the second one, because that's where you can get disqualified. Brake at the 75 meter points, turn in, trail brake into the apex, minimize the amount of delay between the pedals and just kind of maximize the car's momentum as much as you can, because the Rocco is not a very powerful car. It's a very light car, so it means you have to keep it in motion constantly, even if that means sliding the rear end everywhere. So braking at the 50 meter board again, pivoting in, a lot of trail braking on this one, braking nice and early, trail brake until the apex and accelerating back out. I was pretty happy with that one. Now this is always a make or break point, you really have to cut this just enough. Alright, so that was hyper aggressive. I would hazard to say that in a game like RF2, that probably would have ended my lap. This is one of those places where we talk about AMS2 still being a bit more simcade. My move there was way too aggressive. I don't think that should have been sustainable, but hell, it was, so that's part of the lap. As you can see, a natural rotation through that hairpin, that's what helps you in the Rocco. When you get the car naturally rotating, getting the rear end around, you don't have to waste time scrubbing the tires. The car basically turns for you from gyroscopic force alone. Nice and flat here again, lining it up, and as soon as we get the car straight, we're going to brake hard, down for the last hairpin of the track. Again, nice natural rotation from the car, and just accelerating all the way out and using the entire track. Across the line for a 130.435, it thinks my potential is in the low 130s. I'd be curious to see if you guys can get it into the 129s. If you do manage to do that, hit me up down below, I really want to see that. Alright, an old favourite from the channel. Moving into the P2 class, we've got the Sigma P1, ironically named, at Kyalami Grand Prix 2019. So this is something that's featured on the channel before, clearly. It was part of our car setup series. I was really into this car and track combination because they were part of the new contents of AMS2. I was quite enthralled by one of the leaderboard records set by one of our viewers, and I chased it and tried my very best to try and catch him. Now, full disclosure, something that you guys took issue with is that we did use the broken hard tire compound at the time to set these times. I'm not sure if these times have been wiped off the leaderboards or if they still stand, but if you're on the soft compounds, you probably won't be able to match these unless you're an absolute alien. The hard compounds saved us a lot of time. I didn't actually know that it was a bug or an exploit or whatever until he actually mentioned it to me, so I was trying to do this with soft compounds like you guys, and finally when I got the hards on there, it made all the sense in the world. It also explained why I was having so much trouble in some of the open wheeler laps on places like Imola and stuff. But that being said, this lap really gave me an appreciation for the Sigma, and it gave me an appreciation for this track. In their default states, I really didn't enjoy driving this car on this track, but after a lot of car setup tweaking, I got it to a point where it finally started to feel responsive, finally started to feel fun, and the force feedback was really kicking my teeth in. So very, very cool stuff. So let's get into the cockpit and talk through the lap. Alright, starting off the lap, I'm always focusing on not bidding the first corner because that really determines how quickly you can come out onto this final straight here. I'm hoping that I actually race the Ghost on this one, much to my dismay. I hate racing Ghosts because they just up my anxiety and they get in the way of my, view of apexes. But I'm always worried that the Ghost is going to exceed me on that first straight, like I've somehow messed up the entry. So he was quicker than me on this first collection of corners throughout this lap. You can see I'm doing my best at this point to hang on. I had just learned the track the day prior, so I wasn't really all in on it, but I certainly learned a lot from following his Ghost, especially on being hyper aggressive, downshifting early and just kind of scrubbing the car through that one at high speed. Cutting in nice and early here as well. You can see we kind of catch him a little bit on this lap. And trying to zigzag through here without losing the car is always a fun pursuit. So as you can see, it's a very give or take lap. He's quicker on some corners, I'm quicker on others. I think it's the best kind of racing when it comes to leaderboards. As much as I dislike racing Ghosts because they stratospherically multiply my anxiety levels and I can't focus on the race itself. You can see all of the other laps that I've done are all done exclusively without Ghosts. This is the one exception. Primarily because I was using his Ghost to learn this track as well as doing the leaderboard record. So pretty neck and neck at the end here. I was very lucky that he binned this very last corner. As you can see, even I didn't do too well on it, so I overshot. Caught the slide, but still lost a couple of tenths on there. But I think he lost even more. Now, after this was done, he very quickly came back and reinstated his time by an entire second, so I'm not as fast as this gentleman is. I did my very best and I learned Kyalami to a higher degree than I thought possible within a day or two. So very thankful for that experience, and if you guys are interested in that track and car combination, I wholeheartedly recommend it, though you may not be able to set any meaningful leaderboard records now that the hard compound tire bug has been fixed. And now for a complete change of pace, we've got the Puma Road Car. I'm sorry, I forget the model name, I just pulled it up. This was 4 AM at this point. I had never driven Donington Park before in my life. I decided to grab a completely alien track and car combination and just take it down a notch, make sure that it was road car spec. I could kind of relax a little bit, wind down after the prototypes, and because it was so late in the evening, day, night, morning, whatever you want to call it, I just kind of wanted to do something which was fun but still engaging. So the Puma at Donington Park it was. Alright, one thing I really enjoy about this one, I've got to say the sound engine in AMS2 isn't really my favorite thing on the planet, but this particular car has a great throatiness, kind of reminds me of the AE86 Dory Dory's mobile, and that turbo suck, that induction sound is always very inspiring for absolute mongoloids like me. So braking nice and early, it's very easy to unsettle the car under hard braking. You need a lot of front brake bias on this one in order to make it work. All flat out through here, and coming down here I tried to go flat out a few times and just shot out wide, and it was a bad time. You have to coast right there, brake nice and early, cut over the curbs. One of the great things about being in a road car is you can be hyper aggressive with the curbs. You've got to really work out where the track limits are, so I really tried to do that over the dozen or so laps of this track that I did in preparation for this. Brake at the sign there. Again, over the curb, possibly not ideal. I had a few undulations in my throttle input and stuff, but it was enough to get me over the line. Nice and early over that, catching the oversteer. One of the funny things about this is I actually did this with my Formula 1 ClubSport V2 rim, which is an awful thing to do in a car that requires as much steering lock as a road car. So next time, definitely the oval rim. And certainly when I get a more sturdy cockpit that doesn't flex everywhere, I will be using the oval rim a lot more because I can exert a lot more upper body force onto something that isn't quite as flimsy as what I have. So braking at the sign there again for the second final hairpin. getting quite aggressive with the grass there and cutting over the curb. I was really trying to be mindful of track limits. I really kind of probed what could be done on prior laps just to make sure I could get away with this, and again, just basically going over the curb. One thing I love about road cars, you can be hyper aggressive, and over the line with, yeah, about 1 or 2 tenths quicker than the prior lap. There are only about 20 entries on the actual leaderboard for this car and this track combo, so it's not exactly the most hyper-competitive environment. I'm sure some of you guys, especially the aliens among you, will completely annihilate my time, get down into the 139s, probably 138s or something like that. But considering I had learnt the track possibly an hour prior, I'd only ever driven the car for the first time an hour prior, I was pretty happy with that outcome. So that pretty much concludes all of our hot laps for today. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure to hit subscribe and join us for the next one. I actually have plenty more left to go. I just couldn't cram them all into the one video. The running time just became absurdly long. So if you guys are interested in us continuing the series and touching base every so often, talking about more track and car combinations, my experiences trying to surmount them, and you know, the challenges that you guys are having in racing these cars, well, just let me know and we'll continue this series. So without further ado, we'll see you guys next time.